Hey, welcome back to another lesson on harmony. Today we're going to go over what I kind of call the standard progression for classical music when it's diatonic in the natural major key. Um, it still occurs throughout some pop music, even some current classical music, even some of your simpler jazz. And it's a good thing to really just have memorized and really understand. There are exceptions to it. A lot of what we're going to get into later will be how to not follow this, but it's kind of a good default setting so that when you deviate, you actually know what you're deviating from as opposed to doing something kind of random. So we're going to go over it backwards because the entire idea is to get to the 1. Because the 1 can move to anything. It can stay on the 1, it can move to the 3, to the 6, to the 4, the 2, the 7, the 5, it doesn't matter. It can go anywhere, and so oftentimes it will end a section, and you can start your new section somewhere different, so frequently that's ultimately what you're pushing towards. Even if you find little ways to delay getting there, you're gonna wind up there eventually. So most common is that precedes it is the 5. The 5 really heavily implies the 1 for reasons we'll get into later, but it almost always goes there. The one exception is it can sometimes go to the 6. Now, this is what's known as a deceptive cadence, and it's deceptive because you think you're going to the 1. You've just had the 5. Oh, we must be getting to the 1. Nope, going to the 6. And, at the early stages of classical music, this was something that was really shocking to people. Women would faint, men would reach for pistols ready to duel. My goodness, that vile cur, how dare he deceive me? It was nasty times, but for the most part, it was just, you had the 5-1, which I'll mention is called an authentic cadence, and there was peace in the music world of the 1700s. Another way to get to the 1 is the 7, specifically the diminished 7, and it just really heavily implies that the 1 chord is coming, once again, similar to the 5 for reasons we'll talk about later. Now, one thing that's not shown here, because it kind of goes into, it kind of goes beyond triadic harmony, is you can go from the 7 to the 5, though usually what that ends up sounding more like is the 5-7 chord, which, the dominant 5. And that's because everything in a diminished triad, all of the notes, if we're in C, B, D, F, all of those are in the 5, because that's just G, B, D, F if you're doing a dominant G chord. But it's not technically triadic at that point, so we'll let that go, but know that that's not only a strong option, but it's really, really common. Before that, you have the 2. The 2 can go to either the 7 or the 5. That's why it's going to the bracketed off box. Not really much more to say about that. The 4 can do the same thing, but it can also go to the 2, or it can go to the 1. Now, frequently when it goes to the 1, this is used as a tag. If you've heard the end of most hymns when they go Amen, that's often the 4 going to the 1, and that's known as a plagal cadence. It's often done with the 4 chord in the second inversion, so the bass note is the 1 chord, and in some ways it's not really its own chord at that point. It's essentially meant to almost be like a suspension. It's meant to essentially say, we're still on the 1 chord, even though it's the notes of the 4 chord. It's just slightly different, so it has some pizzazz to it, because they actually thought that a plagal cadence in those times was pretty pizzazzy. So, now, also going to this bracket, you have the 6 chord. So the 6 chord can either go to the 4 or the 2, doesn't really matter which. And then before that is just the 3. 3 goes to the 6. It can also go to the 4. Nothing especially special about either of those things. So that's really pretty much all of the diatonic chord progressions you'll see from natural major. Just because I don't have a handy-dandy picture of it for harmonic major, I'll quickly just say it's the exact same thing, only your 4 chord is minor. That's really the only difference. You can also get a little bit wild and crazy by having a diminished 2 or flat augmented 6 chord, but it will pretty much just be this chord progression, even though the A is naturaled in those if we're in C, with just the 4 chord as minor. But anyway, that's really everything. So going it the opposite way, the 3 can go to the 4 or the 6, can go to the 6 can then go to the 4 or the 2. The 4 can go to the 2, the 1, the 7, or the 5. The 2 can go to the 7 or the 5. The 7 can go to the 1 or the 5, and the 5 can go to the 1 or the 6. Now, the only other thing I want to point out is really classical chord progressions primarily move one of two ways. Either you're dropping in thirds or you're moving up in fourths. Now, if you notice, you can pretty much do that you can move down in thirds pretty much entirely from the 6. You can go to the 6, to the 4, to the 2, to the 7, to the 5, and at that point you would then go to the 1. Or, you would go back to the 6 and do it all over again if you just wanted to start an infinite loop. And in terms of moving in fourths, you can also do that starting on the 3rd, actually. You can go to the 3rd, to the 6, to the 2, to the 5, to the 1. And there's usually a combination of those movements, but those are primarily the way things go. So if you get those in your head, you'll be doing really well. The only exceptions are moving upwards by step, where you move to the 3, to the 4, or the 7 to the 1. But like I said, get used to hearing progressions moving down in thirds and up in fourths, and you'll recognize that pattern a lot. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I hope you have a great day, and come back for more videos soon.